Welcome to Venator Chronicles Podcast. I'm Ethan Taylor.
And I'm Dustin Jelly.
Our hope is to inspire new and old hunters alike.
We hope you can join us on this journey of lessons that we have, are, and will learn through the world of hunting.
Dude. What an awesome. You guys are going to be excited for this one.
This was a fun.
We keep saying that every episode, but I swear,
it just keeps getting better. It gets
is
more fun.
It is
and maybe it's just because we've been cooped up in our houses because of these are trying times.
I'm lobbying for this being called the lockdown episodes for COVID-19.
Yes. Maybe we'll release more episodes to keep you guys entertained.
Yeah, and the reason you can't see this right now is because there's actually a plastic sheet between Dustin and I in order to keep...
We're keeping 6 feet apart.
Yeah, we're definitely not holding hands or anything like that.
No physical contact. Yeah.
Okay, Dustin, who joins us today?
Dude, we just got done recording an episode with Aron freaking Snyder. Which, if you guys don't know who Aron Snyder is by now, you have not listened to any of our previous episodes. So you obviously don't deserve to know who Aron Snyder is.
No,
but for those who have heard, let's talk about Aron Snyder. This was actually a really fun episode. If you don't know who Aron Snyder is, he's kind of one of the big, I would say, influencers in the hunting community.
Yeah.
The guy's got a ton of experience in archery itself, as well as hunting, specifically backpack Western hunting. He's been doing it for years and years. And he also puts out a great podcast. Yep. And just puts out a lot of knowledge and wisdom to the hunting community for free that I have benefited from. So,
well, what you can look forward to in this podcast, we talk about a few pretty cool topics.
Mm-hmm.
What was the first one, Dusty?
Man, we talked a little bit about social media, and did we start there? I don't
no,
remember.
we started. No,
we didn't start there.
It's okay. It's okay.
We covered. They're
gonna find out. We did cover a lot of topics.
Yeah. Why don't you give us a rundown?
Well, I guess we first kind of started out talking about kind of the things that he doesn't get to talk about as much as he might like to. Yeah. And it's the intangibles. It's the things that you can't buy. Mm-hmm. And it's from experience. It's going into the backwoods. It's learning the things firsthand. And
how to develop a good mental capacity.
Yes, that mental toughness.
Which basically boiled down to, I'm not going to ruin it, but
it
boiled down to embrace the suck.
Yeah. Yeah. So he gives us a little insight on that. We talk about whitetail.
Yeah. His experience.
Yep, his experience. We talk about some ideal arrow setups for whitetail. And then we also kind of wrap up with just social media. And, I mean, you just continue listening and you'll get to hear all the details of it. I almost said nitty-gritty, but then I thought the gritty part was not worthy. It's not worthy.
Yeah. Let's not go down that road.
So anyways, guys, this intro's long enough. Please enjoy it. I know we did. It was
enjoy it,
absolute
share it.
blast.
It's a good episode.
Yeah.
They just keep getting better.
Yeah, you got a good point there, Dusty. If you haven't subscribed or you're thinking about it, please do. We absolutely appreciate everybody who listens, and we just want to continue growing the hunting community, and this is just another step in that direction. So thanks for tuning in, and enjoy. All right. Well, cool. Maybe let's just jump into it then.
Yeah. So, I don't know. So one of the things that we've got kind of a bunch of questions, but one of the things I was thinking, a lot of times you get on these podcasts and it seems like everybody wants to hound you for, gear review or, what arrow you're shooting and what bow you're shooting and all the equipment stuff that you know and you love. And I mean, I'm guilty of listening to every single episode you've ever done about that. But is there any kind of topics that you never get to talk about on a podcast that you would actually love to talk about?
Man, that's a tough one, but the mental toughness side of things I get asked about sometimes, but we don't talk about that. But with your background, obviously, if you take a mixed martial arts fighter, for example, there's different types of toughness. not saying that you don't have, let's say, a mixed martial artist that can't go hang in the backcountry for 12 days, but I hang out with a lot of them. In general, they're like, this blows. Like, this, but they can, they hop in a cage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what most people would be scared to death of, but then you're like, hey, we got a backpack in here. We're going to be off trail and bushwhack, and they're scared to death to a certain degree. And there's different types of mental toughness. And, getting to the type of mental toughness you need for the task at hand, the root of it is going to be the same, meaning the more times you're in the cage, the more comfortable you're going to be. Mm-hmm. That adrenaline rush you first have, that lactic acid buildup, all the other shit that happens, it eventually goes away somewhat to where it's manageable, where you control that anxiety. Hunting is no different, and backpack hunting is no different. I think some people are born to probably not backpack hunt, but in general, the more you go, the farther you push yourself, the more trained you get. Just like anything, the more that you are going to feel comfortable in at home back there. And in my case, obviously, I spend way too much time back there, so I'm never nervous anymore. I'm not, and I've always been that way since I was a kid. It's just gotten better and better. And so when you get these guys that drop thousands of dollars on gear and thousands of dollars on a bow, and they're worried if they have 22% FOC instead of 19 and whatever other crazy thing you could come up with, they never learn to read a map, never learn to use a compass, don't know how to build a fire, don't know how to tie a square knot or a prusik or a bowline, but they have the nicest shit known to man because you can buy that. And the things that are earned are not quite up to snuff. And not with everyone, but with a lot of guys. And I think that's something people need to think about is you can get a book, you can learn, you can get a buddy, you can learn a lot about fieldcraft, bushcraft, breaking down animals. Those are all things that will lighten your pack weight by your knowledge. And the more you push yourself, just like with anything, you will become desensitized to pain. Don't get me wrong, pain sucks, but you become, Lance Banning said, become friends with pain and you'll never be alone.
Yeah.
That is true, right? You get used to that, being in that, being able to kind of go to that dull area when things are bad and stay on the brighter side of things. Not to go on too big of a tangent here, but
this is great.
I think people would be farther ahead than spending money on, I'm a gear guy, but in the reality is you look at my pack when we hike in, there ain't a whole lot of gear in that pack because it sucks to carry it. I've got the bare minimum that I could possibly get away with. So I guess something to think about.
Okay. Well, actually, that kind of was one of the questions I had for you in kind of a bigger scope was, we hear a lot of what you get to do now, but what was it like for you starting out in hunting, and kind of what was some of the experiences that helped you build that mental fortitude? Because I talked about it in one episode a couple months ago, where this last season, just being so new, I just kind of had to go through one of the mental trudges of.
He wanted to quit.
Yeah, I wanted to quit. I'm like, hunting is stupid.
Yeah.
I'm hunting whitetail in the Midwest. But just like, what was that process for you starting out in hunting, and how did you get where you are today?
You got to figure my childhood was different than most, and it wasn't. I had a dad that was fairly rough on me, much rougher. Like I still wouldn't mind beating the living shit out of him today. We don't talk much. And so having that, and then being raised in the middle, like right off the Pacific Crest Trail in Oregon, I worked on a trail crew team where we hiked the wilderness trails with a hatchet and a bow saw, but it was actually like a crosscut saw, single and double butt, and then obviously on the non-wilderness trails, chainsaw. And I did that at 14 years old all the way through school. Then I joined the military, and so I was backpacking and backpack hunting at a very young age. And so for me to be alone, for me to be, several miles into the wilderness, I didn't have, it happened at such a young age. I didn't walk into it at 25 or 30 or 35. by the time I was 21, although, you know, I couldn't file my taxes or pay a bill to save my life, you could drop me off anywhere and I was going to be okay. You know, and that's only gotten better since then. And so I think, you know, when you talk about like, there's a couple of things. One, it sucks. You probably weren't afraid, right? It wasn't fear that was pushing you to go back home, especially if you're hunting like whitetails.
Yeah.
It was more just like, this is stupid. Like, why the hell am I putting money into this and suffering? I'm not seeing anything. I can't hit shit, whatever, all these different variables.
All the above.
Where, yeah, I mean, I get that question constantly. And it's like, well, if you think about it, well, you're and I bring up different things. You're not going to grab a camera and know how to use it out of the gate. You're not going to walk into the octagon and go against a seasoned fighter or into a ring and not get your butt kicked. You know, you're going to have to take some ass whoopings, and you're going to take them probably for a while. And then pretty soon you're going to get better at it, and you're going to be like, man, this is the most awesome thing in the world. But if you can't get that initial, if you can't get over that initial hump, you'll never know what could have been. And that's what kills people, is that hump. They can't get over that initial, you know, it's just, I mean, paying your way.
Yeah.
What would be like for you the most like that? What would be like the biggest hindsight's 2020 moment for you where maybe it wasn't successful by the world standards, but like what you gained from it was something that you wouldn't trade for maybe the animal or whatever it was? Is there anything like that that's happened where you're like, at the end of it, you're like, yeah, that was still worth it, where it was just would have been an utter fail as far as the world is concerned?
Oh man. I don't know if I could answer that exactly the way that you're asking it, but I would say that, I think learning on my own and learning the hard way, I wouldn't take that. I wouldn't change a thing with that. I can't pick a specific, that butt kicking was definitely worth it, man. That's
the best.
I don't have one of those stories,
yeah.
But I think overall and in general, the butt kicking I took learning on my own was something I would never change. Cause, you know, I get, rangefinders, for example. I think rangefinders are awesome, but I came up in the day where you didn't have them. So I had to learn to judge yardage. We didn't have a rangefinder. And so now, like these known distance, you know, ASA tournaments, or, you know, guys that go to a 3D and they're like, oh my God, I can't have my rangefinder. You know, I prefer not having it at tournament. I like the unknown tournaments. I like the fact that I can judge relatively well, but you don't come out of the womb judging yardage great. You got to practice. It's like math, right? It's a perishable skill. It's land navigation. How many guys grab a GPS and are looking at their heads down all the time? And I don't even use it. I have a wristwatch that gives me an 8 or 10 digit grid coordinate. So UTM, so I could plot it out on a map. And I'm glad I learned the manual way to land nav. I'm glad I don't need a GPS. I got lost many times, and it was a frustrating ordeal, but in the end, I'm going to be okay when others are not. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. I just say that because of how I was raised and brought up. Yeah. I don't know that answered your question. But.
Yeah, no, I think that pretty well captures it.
just get out there and go through the suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Talking about the suck, and I'm not a very good, I'm not a Donnie Vincent, right? I'm not I'm not a Brian Call. I'm not a poetic guy that's going to type some motivational speech with every photo I, post. It's, for me and as much as I can in text, and I'm sure guys get mad at me in a message, but, guys will message me like, hey, I've got this sight tape program. I did this, that. And I'm like, well, did you ever think about just sighting in your bow, like the normal way? Like, guys will ask a question and I'll be like, how about you read about that and learn? Like read about, instead of you getting the easy button from me, how about you get off your ass and hit the Googleizer and start reading and learn what you're doing, rather than, because there's a lot of learning on the way to that easy button. and people skip all that middle ground. So, not going too much of a tangent there.
No, I think that's right on. Cause I know for me, I like the easy button when it comes to the technical side, and Dustin's definitely challenged me in that respect. Once I picked up a bow, cause I was like, hey, I need this. What should I do with this? And it was just like question after question instead of like you're saying. It was like, I take way more pride in what I do with my bow now and setup and the technical side of it. When I've been able to actually put the time in and ultimately confidence in what I'm doing and knowing like I did this, I know I did this correct for me. So that aspect of it has been huge, and it is a challenge not to just go to the bow shop, have them throw this on. But yeah, I don't know. That for me is, I know my tendency is to lean towards, I'll let someone else do the technical.
Well, and I think, you talk about that and getting off the subject of outdoors and archery, but I have to do that with my wife because I can't seem to pay a bill to save my life or file taxes or do day-to-day shit. So I'm a hypocrite by saying, the easy button. My wife, God bless her, is my easy button with that stuff. But if you need arrows built or a string made or your bow tuned or nav, or, you pick it with the outdoors. I have spent my entire life to perfect that. But I can't fold a fucking t-shirt. Sorry about the language. I can't fold a t-shirt to save my life. But if you needed somewhat whatever, pick whatever it is, right? As far as the outdoors, I can probably do it, but I focused my entire life on that, and so I'm kind of a hypocrite because obviously I'm picking what I'm good at. Talking about hitting an easy button, should I hit them all day long? It's just not in the outdoors.
Yeah. Well, actually, that reminds me. As long as we're off of hunting for a second, I had a pivotal moment. It was sometime after. It was after high school when I was going to college. I had crashed my motorcycle into a tree, and I was determined that I was going to rebuild it and re-ride this road that I crashed on. And I remember my buddy's dad, I was actually living with them at the time. He's a master mechanic. And every day he'd come home, I would just hound him with all these questions. And one day he just looks at me and he goes, "It's just a bike. Figure it out." And I was like, no, seriously, like for whatever reason, it was like a light switch. I was like, oh, I can do that. And I just went outside and I just plucked away at it and started figuring it out and quit trying to hit the easy button. So there's a lot to that on multiple levels. But yeah, it was one of those moments that definitely had changed my perspective. Like instead of hitting that easy button every time, but here I am, with bow stuff.
Well, just from my experience as a kind of a newbie coming into the hunting industry, it almost seemed like a lot of companies and equipment is being sold and presented as kind of an easy way to do things. I remember when last couple of years really learning how to tune a bow, how to tune an arrow, and all the things that go into it versus just like when I first started and people were like, "Oh, just buy this XYZ broadhead, screw it on because it flies like a field point and you'll be good to go." And realize, no, there's actually a lot more to this. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I learned that real quick. Yeah. Yeah. It's
well, I had this big tirade against that Garmin Zero sight. I just did that crosses a technology line for me. Like I think the product's amazing. I think it's super cool, but as far as, I don't know any killer that would use that sight. As far as, but I do know guys that use that sight that don't really know how to sight their bow in or don't know how to judge yardage. And again, if you want to use it, by all means, I'm not going to, get into that ring, but you're using that because you have skipped the hard work and dedication and determination to learn how to judge yardage and sight your bow in and things like that. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. It's just for me, it's kind of like a GPS. If you want to use one, I think everyone should have a GPS, but I think you should learn to navigate without one as well. And like you guys said, it's an easy button. And I've been fairly, steadfast on my stance with that is, hey, if you want to use it. But for the love of God, at least practice to judge yardage because that thing will fail at some point, just like your GPS. And more than most likely, you probably didn't spend a whole lot of time figuring out any terrain features on the hike in, then your GPS goes down, and then you're up shit creek without a paddle.
Well, do they do that? Like, I imagine the reason or excuse, however you want to look at it, is, well, I want to make sure it's an ethical shot. And then you just go down the rabbit hole of it's like, you're using a bow. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we were to talk about ethics, I don't know. Like, as far as like efficiency, I don't know. I don't know if that's the reason you run into with some of that.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, that's 100% the first cock block they come up with is, it's more ethical. Well, is it more ethical? What if it reads a branch instead of your deer? That's not ethical, right? I mean, your eyeballs aren't going to do that. And if you're talking about ethics, why don't you put poison tipped, jug, whatever poison frog, whatever secretion on your freaking arrow tip? Like, you can go down that wormhole forever. Yeah. And for me, I don't want to argue about that. Work a little harder. Mm-hmm. Learn to judge yardage. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not saying that everybody that uses that Garmin Zero Sight is lazy by any means. I'm sure there's not. It's just a matter of principle to say, if you are using it, sometimes it might be a gut check or take a big step back and be like, yeah, maybe I should have learned to, adjust my second and third axis, and maybe I should have learned to judge yardage. And, that's also a slippery slope if you're saying, let's add technology to be more ethical. Yeah, I think if that goes in front of a panel, that might sound like maybe we should just stop hunting.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Oh, man, that's brutal.
Oh, man. So another question, kind of going back, because you alluded a little bit, backpacking, being a couple of guys from the Midwest that haven't really gotten out of the Midwest to hunt yet. And I'm hoping to do my first mule deer hunt this fall with a couple friends. One of them, he's been out to the West a bunch. But for us uneducated Midwesterners to the Western hunting world, what are some good starting tips that you would give to us to do and to take in consideration to make the most of that trip and to be not necessarily successful, but not to be complete bumbling idiots in the woods out there?
Oh, I'd say one, obviously this is easy to say, but try to remember that you're out there to have fun and don't ever panic. Like, the more I've done this, the calmer I've gotten, meaning if my physical ability is there and my hunting ability is there, generally something pans out. And what I mean by that is if you have pressure, maybe you're not finding animals and it's really easy to get down on yourself, just try to stay, it's better than being at work, right? Try to keep a positive attitude at all times. Two, picking your first, if you spot a mule deer at 7 o'clock in the morning, your first inclination is going to be to haul ass over to it. And that is as wrong as you can get. Well, normally it is, unless you're going to set up an ambush. They don't stop usually, but their final bed usually is until 10, sometimes 11 o'clock. They're fiddly farting around and moving. And so once you get that thing where what we call planted, once it's planted, then you approach your stock and don't rush. The stock you can rush in spots, but you're going to want to, if you're cool with taking a cell phone photo, take the photo and draw on the photo for your approach, so you know where you're at when you get over there. Because believe me, some of the stocks that stock where I passed that buck last year with Frank, and I don't know if you guys saw any of the videos where some of those bucks I was on. Yeah, those were a mile from Frank and 2 to 3 miles from the position I started from to get to him. Jeez. Wow. And so, you get that far over there. You want to talk about the cone of shame walking back after you've blown one out. You're like, okay, I just walked 4 miles for nothing. But, being very methodical with that. And then knowing there's times you can run, and I mean run, and not have an issue. And then there's times you may not want to go more than, a couple feet every minute, especially when you're in that, you're in that kill zone where you're really in the red zone, I guess. But not really, don't push the issue unless the issue needs to be pushed. And obviously a lot of that comes from experience, but you'll find that after you blow a few mule deer out after you hike 2-3 miles just for the stock and you're 8 miles in already. I don't think that's one of the reasons I have so much respect for like Sal. Sal's been doing this just as long as I have, longer. Actually, he's older than I am. And, he's very wise individual when it comes to that stuff. And the thing that people don't realize, I mean, how I'm able to get so close to animals is I may wait 38 yards out for an hour before I make a move. And I'm watching everything I possibly can. Is there another deer I missed? Watching their ears or whatever parts of their body I can see which direction they're facing. Can I move 3 feet to the left so when they stand up, do I have a better shot? Can I get 3 feet to the left? Is there anything on me that's going to make any noise in the moment of truth? And I'm talking like minuscule, small amount of noises. You get sub 20 yards, it's a different world. I mean, the noise factor is just, that's one of the reasons I like those vanes compared to feathers. You blow a 200-inch mule deer out, which I have done. When a feather rubs against your pant leg, you'll be thinking real hard about shooting traditional to beat trad. It happens. So just things like that. And then not camping where the deer live. And I make fun of out-of-staters all the time for camping in the basin. But truly, it will seem counterproductive to camp in some of the spots you probably should camp because it's so far to go. But the farther back you are and the bigger field of view you have, the more you can see, the more you can glass, the more deer you'll probably see because you can glass multiple spots. It's not that far. You think about it, how fast can you guys run a mile? Roughly.
I'm about probably 5 minutes.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious.
5 minute mile.
Yeah, 5 minute mile.
Yeah.
Flat.
Yeah.
No, not quite. Not anymore. Not anymore.
Maybe.
Are you probably
I'll
still,
give
you're
it
going to be
12 minutes, 12 minutes, 14 minutes.
I mean, either, so that's
Downhill.
let's say a 14-minute, which is probably about where I'm at. If it's a mile and a half away and you can run it in let's say 10 minutes, which is realistic, you can probably walk it in double that or triple. You're only talking 30 minutes to get there, let's say 40 minutes. Well, if the deer's planted, he's probably not going to move anyway. And the chances are, if you were in a closer position, you may not have seen him. And this is obviously hypothetical because sometimes you can be closer, but you camp right in the middle of where the deer are. You're probably not going to be shooting anything anyway because they don't hang out there. So you definitely want to make sure where your camp spot is.
Man, one thing you hit on there too, as far as this is one thing I was talking to Dustin about. I recognize, especially this last season.
Well, we both did.
Yeah, where it's like the moment a deer, because we're hunting whitetails, and the moment a deer like steps out, everything in me is like the moment's gonna leave, the moment's gonna leave, the moment's gonna leave, and everything feels so rushed.
Yeah.
And it's like anytime they move their ear, it's like, oh, that's because of me. I need to find my shot and take it. And like that is one thing I'm like I need to work on so badly for next year because there are things where it's like the deer, in hindsight, I look at it, I'm like, the deer's, like, I didn't do anything. There's nothing that was changing. The deer probably would have been totally fine. I didn't need to rush anything. And it's one of those things where I'm like, yep, time to slow down a little bit.
Well, I can tell you from going from a compound to a stick and being able to shoot a compound as well as I could, where I could put an arrow in something relatively easy at 80 yards. Going to the stick, one of the major things I learned was if you do your job, they are not going to stop doing whatever they were doing. So don't be a dipshit and rush it. And with the compound, I could.
Yeah.
I could rush it and get away with it usually, where with a stick, something's 80 yards away. That's a par 4 and probably an hour and a half into a stock where I had to wait. And the more that happened, the more I learned. And the more I learned, obviously, the better my stalking got. And so, when I was first getting into it, I'm blowing a couple animals out, and I'm like, okay, I have got to reassess my situation because this is not working. I have got to do something different. And, obviously I was able to pick it up and work it out. But yeah, if you're doing your job, those animals aren't really going to change doing what they were when you first spotted them. And that's the problem. You get an animal in front of you and all you're thinking, your brain is just going, shoot.
Yeah.
Shoot,
Yeah.
Go forward, go forward.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's hard to calm that down.
Yeah.
And I've literally had to smack guys and be like, dude, Jesus, would you shut up and just chill for a minute, because you'll end up generally most of the time you're going to, probably blow the animal out.
Well, Dustin and I probably aren't good company for each other because when we went hunting together and there was an opportunity, I was the guy going like, shoot, come on, go, hurry up, go. So we between the two of us, the experience probably isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, that just being so new to hunting and anytime you get an animal in front of you, and especially this last year after, I didn't really have that much experience with the compound, but then going to a stick bow, I was just like, well, I'm just going to take anything that steps in front of me. And anything that did step in front of me, I was just like, oh my gosh, I got to get this. I got to do it now, or otherwise I'm never going to have. And I think looking back, it was just like, man, you dummy. You just blew everything out because you had to rush it. And versus the one time where I had 18 deer pour in and I had to sit there for a while. It's like, oh, this isn't actually that bad. And they don't notice that I'm here if I'm just chilling out. And just a completely different mindset. And I'm just naturally an aggressive person, so I'm like, I just want to charge in and go hard, and it doesn't work, as I've been finding out.
Yeah, and I'm aggressive when I hunt, but what you learn is when you learn when you can be aggressive compared to when you can't. And with the mule deer thing, the problem that you're gonna find is when you make that mistake, that is going to be a very painful physical mistake, because you have to find new deer, and if it's an old buck, for example, they're pretty keen, and so they're probably not coming back for a couple 3 days. If it's the only deer, you're going to have to walk back to your camp and probably move your camp, which really sucks. And so you really, I've talked about this before, but I was in the Army. I was in Korea, and we were doing the headspace and timing on a 50 cal. We were having lessons for it, and we were working with the Rock Army. And when we screwed up doing it, you have to do push-ups or whatever, nothing big. But if they screwed up, they got hit in the back of the head. Well, they learned a lot faster than we did. So I can guarantee you, whitetail mistakes, you're not going to learn as fast maybe as you will a high country mule deer hunt, because that will be ingrained in your mind for the rest of your life from the pain you basically just inflicted on yourself by your own doing from screwing up. And that learning experience does not go away.
Oof.
Oh man.
Hey, so we do listen to pretty much every podcast that you put out, with whoever it ends up being with. And it sounds like one of the more interesting things to us is that you've, like, at least at this point, is it whitetail is like your favorite thing to hunt right now? Is that accurate?
No, not favorite, but
okay.
What I had talked about was, I'd hunted elk for so long that if I had to choose between elk and whitetail, it would be a tough decision. I'd probably choose, whitetail, but definitely not more. Mountain hunts are my thing. Mule deer and sheep and mountain goat, especially mountain goat and mule deer. That is definitely my top priority. And that's not going to change. I just love being at 12, 13,000 feet hunting animals and backpacking. And you also have to figure, by the time whitetail season rolls around, I have beaten the shit out of myself so much. I'm ready to eat some ho-hos and eat a tree stand. So if whitetail season was the same for me as mule deer, I wouldn't hunt whitetail. I'd be hunting high country mule deer.
You mean you don't get all whitetail fit and just get all jacked up for sitting in a tree stand?
I get whitetail fit.
It's his own version of it.
The real whitetail fit.
The reality whitetail fit.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I definitely I like to eat, so because I'm going into whitetail season in the peak physical shape of my life and flushing it down the shitter every minute I'm there, because I'm like, cookie, yep, oh, ho, yeah, I'll eat that. I've just been eating clean the entire year. My wife's a wonderful cook. She's all organic and, from scratch. And then here I am, double fisting some kind of freaking cookie we bought at the gas station. So I'm getting better at that, but I didn't put on really too much weight at all this year, but, and also I've been lifting a lot more. So I put on some muscle, but the thing with like whitetails in a tree stand, it's is cool having a when you have the advantage of being, up in a tree, and watching things come in and watching just animal behavior. I really like that. And I also, you get to shoot more of them for where I go. So I like to shoot stuff. So, I mean, that's a big bonus. You only get to shoot one mule deer. I think, I don't know how many whitetails I shot, but it was a pile of them.
Man. That was actually one of my questions that I had for you, and hearing you talk about the fun that you've had whitetail hunting. And I think coming from the Midwest, we kind of get this envy of like, oh man, these guys out west, they get to do all these cool, awesome hunts out in the mountains, and we just got whitetail. And then hearing guys like you talk about like how much fun you have shooting whitetail, it's just like, man, what's the fascination with these things in comparison to all these Western game hunts that you get to go on?
Oh, I don't know that as far as because I've hunted whitetail for a long time. Mm-hmm. So keep in mind, I'm hunting good whitetail spots, like really good. There probably wouldn't be the fascination if I was seeing a deer a day, right? I mean, keep putting things into perspective. Like I'm hunting, whether it's Alabama or Kansas or, well, I haven't really hunted Nebraska in a while, but Oklahoma, Texas. I mean, I'm on, I basically like whatever you call that, leasing land, or I'm hunting private land. And generally I don't have to pay because we do some kind of a trade, or I help them out with an elk hunt or something. But, I'm seeing multiple deer a day. There is nothing fun about sitting in a tree stand for the greater good of sitting, where a mountain hunt, you cannot see anything and it's still pretty freaking epic. Right. Mm-hmm. There's nothing epic about sitting your fat ass down for 4 hours and seeing nothing, for me. So that would be why, I'm in a really good spot, target rich environment. I'm getting to shoot a lot. And I just like watching, whether it's small bucks or does or whatever come through, or big bucks. It's cool watching them come in. It gets my adrenaline going, and I don't get that as much on. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw like the mountain goat hunt, but I'm in the cliff right above it. I shoot it just a few yards away, and I don't even know if my heart rate went up other than climbing to it, where my leg was shaking so bad with that big buck coming in this year I didn't kill, that the stand was starting to make noise. I was trying to pin my knee against the tree so it stopped shaking. So it's different where if you put you guys in those cliffs with me, deer in reverse, so it's just what you're used to.
Well, at this point, I see any size buck come in and I start shaking.
I know. It's
just so new.
It's like it's just so polarizing.
I hear a squirrel coming in thinking it's a deer, and I start getting just all amped up. Yeah.
It is polarizing.
Yeah. No, that's cool though. I mean, that's why you do it. But I'm super lucky that the all the different opportunities I have, and I do get some funny comments. Somebody sent me something on a Q&A I did. Are you going to hunt at public land for whitetails and prove the doubters wrong? And I'm like, I think, what do you mean? And he said, that you wouldn't be able to shoot as many bucks on public land. And I'm like, I wouldn't. If there's doubters thinking that, I'm agreeing with them. What kind of question is that? Like, of course I'm not gonna be able to shoot that many deer on public land. I maybe you could, I guess, but like, if there was doubters about that, they were 100% correct. There is not a snowball's chance in hell I'm going to shoot 9 bucks in a year on public land. Probably not. Especially one of the states is Texas, which is like a fraction over 1% public land. So I'm probably not going to shoot, multiple bucks in Texas on public land. So, I have really good opportunities, and that's one of the reasons why it's so much, it's so fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely challenging when you're sitting in northern Minnesota and the deer are so sparse, and the wolves aren't making anything easier, and you just hope to see one that day, at least see one to make it worthwhile. Otherwise,
I lived up there, man. I didn't live in like the Duluth or anything. I was down in the Twin Cities and Blaine, Coon Rapids, where actually we had better deer in the cities than you guys do anywhere. You know, I shot one of my biggest bucks literally wearing a city back tag just outside of Coon Rapids. You know, I've been to where you're at, dude. That's like hell in some ways. Like you're begging for winter in the summer and begging for summer in the winter, and the mosquitoes are bad. The muskie fishing's good though.
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah,
but you can freaking fart out of a tree stand and hear it hit the ground. It's so freaking cold.
It sucks. That's why I think I didn't hunt for the longest time, was just the idea of sitting in a tree stand just was so freaking boring. And if it wasn't actually for the hopes that, you know, I would learn to hunt in the Midwest so that someday when finances and time allowed me to go out west, I probably would have never started hunting because, sitting in a tree stand, freezing your butt off, hoping that something walks by just seemed horrible for the longest time.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, that's a big reason why I even picked up archery was just, one, you could get out for an extended period of time throughout the year, and it was gun season was like, okay, see you later, family. I'm just going to go dump every day from morning till night into sitting in a tree stand freezing, and then deer drives, which I like doing with the family, but it seemed like the archery side of it definitely made it a bit more involved and a little more, at least a little bit more active, where it's like now I'm just head over heels for this stuff. It's just constant.
Yeah. Oh no. Like I said, I've been up there and it's not cool. It's cool. Like it's real cool.
So I don't want to keep you all night. It's getting a little late here. But before we go, just do have to ask a technical question, just because I think a lot of people in the Midwest have a lack of information on understanding what good arrows are. And so if you gave us like a 5-minute rundown on what your kind of ideal whitetail arrow broadhead setup is for people to hear for compound trad, I think that would be super helpful, because that's one of the things we're kind of realizing as ourselves coming in to archery relatively recently, and there's a lot of the people we know, there's definitely a lack of information on what we've learned from guys like you of what makes a good arrow, but I think a lot of people are still kind of lacking that. So if you could give us that, I think that would be great.
So for a compound, at first I was worried about speed from the reasons you guys talked about, listening to guys. And well, I don't know what the speed of sound is, but it's like 11 or 1200 feet per second. So it's much quicker than the arrow you're going to shoot. So I really, after winging a few arrows over deer's backs, I tried to start focusing more on bow noise, and slowing my arrow down, because shooting a heavier arrow, excuse me, to get a quieter bow. And then obviously whatever I could do to the bow to make it quieter. And so, I didn't mind shooting mechanicals, for whitetails at all. And even still, I'd probably shoot mechanicals for whitetails to put a big hole in them. I like fixed blades too, but, for me, I would probably shoot, at least half of my quiver would have mechanicals in it. And I may have some fixed blades in there too, but if I had enough oomph behind my arrow, so let's say if I was 6'1" and a 28.5, 29, down to 28-inch draw length, let's say, and shooting 70 plus pounds, with somewhere in the neighborhood of a 475 grain arrow, which is going to put you somewhere in the, depending upon the bow, 265 to 285 foot per second range. That's where I would want to be at. And then I'd probably shoot a fairly large mechanical head, because I'd have the oomph, to blow through, whatever I wanted. And I'd also shoot a fixed blade head, depending upon the situation. I always have shot a mechanical and a fixed in my quiver when I shot a compound. I'd focus a lot more on the noise of the bow. And then I'd also focus on the noise of the arrow, my vein profile, specifically what type of vein I was shooting, standing down range, have your buddy go down there and listen to arrows whizzing by his head. obviously sit behind something before I get somebody shot. We do that we do that every year here to, loud broadheads, loud vanes and everything. So that would be my focus. I generally shoot foreflets. I don't shoot helical. I shoot offset. So I shoot a straight vane and offset with a compound. I just never needed the helical, with the compounds and tuning them and everything. I never had to worry about, having a helical to correct the arrow. Offset was enough. And then, like I said, figuring out the quietest vane profile. Accuracy is, obviously the most important. That goes without saying, but I would say, right behind accuracy is noise. Whitetail get out of the way quick. And that, again, that 265 to 285 is plenty of speed. And if you're shooting that speed, that means you're probably shooting a pretty heavy arrow, and then that means your bow's going to be pretty dang quiet. As far as the stick, you're already handicapped. You're 180 feet per second or something. So, for me with a whitetail, I try to shoot, a relatively just average weighted arrow, but fairly decent point weight up front. I don't go too crazy. And then I shoot, I shoot quite a bit of vane on my arrow. So I shoot, right now I have 4 3-inch. I've tried 4 4-inch. I've had 3 5-inch. I just want to make sure, I see some guys shooting 2 4-inch or 2. I see all kinds of crazy stuff. So for me, I've just found that a lot of vane in the back. When I say a lot of vane, like 4 3-inch, you're looking at, obviously, you do the math, you got 12 inches of vane. I'm not shooting far enough where people talk about some of the negative sides of a lot of vane on the back end. I get it, but you're not dropping bombs with a stick bow. And so, you're shooting, with a whitetail 20 yards, 25 yards, a pretty far shot. So you're not going to be dealing with like high winds or, unless you're dealing with like super high winds. Because you're probably going to pluck the string. You're probably going to shit your pants. You're probably going to short draw. You're going to do all these things that are wrong. And so you need that vane to correct that as much as you possibly can. And with the broadhead, I want a big hole. I don't really like shooting a 2-blade broadhead for whitetail as much as I do, a 3-blade, 2-blade with bleeders, or a really wide 2-blade. I don't want like 1 inch and a 16th. I really like cutthroat broadheads, but for whitetail, I'd rather shoot 1 inch and, 1 inch and a 3/8, 1.5 inches, 1 inch and 5/8 wide 2-blade, or a 2-blade with bleeder, or a 3-blade, just to get the biggest hole you can, because tracking sucks. I want as much blood on the ground as possible. No different than the rifle. You shoot a deer, or let's say an elk, with a 223. If you hit it right, it's going to kill it. But you can hit it wrong with a 338, and it's going to remember your name. You're going to probably find that thing because it's done so much damage. So, and I shoot 59 pounds roughly, which is actually high for these days. I shoot somewhere, I like to be between 575 and 600, 605, somewhere in there. And I try to stay around 180 feet per second.
Nice. Hey, well, Dustin got his technical question in. I want to ask my non-technical question, if you'll entertain the thought for a second. I don't know if you've spent any amount of time thinking about this type of thing, but I'm curious, just in general. One thing I know that's been a hot topic for some people is just hunting and social media and impacts of that, whether it's positive, negative, non-hunters, potential hunters, people who already hunt. I guess, what's your general, are you like, you know what, it just is what it is, or do you have more intent with it? Or, I guess, where do you stand on it? Do you think it's just, I don't know. I'd just be curious on what your stance is on it overall.
Oh no, there's some fucking idiots on social media that should be banned forever. You think about it. I don't know if you two are religious. I am not a religious person, but if you two were Catholic or Lutheran, if you walk into a Catholic church preaching Catholicism, you're not really getting anywhere. They're already Catholic, right? They're in the church. So you have to think about how you present that outside of the church. And if you have a holier than thou attitude and whatever, it's a bad outlook on, the Catholic religion, and it can be said the same for anything. When you have social media, that Catholic Church is worldwide at the click of a button. So whatever you do now isn't just the people with your same beliefs. It's like if you go into a bar and ask an alcoholic if alcohol is bad, of course he's not going to say no. He's an alcoholic. That's why he's in there. So, but if you spread that bar all over the world to people that are, maybe had an accident happen with an alcoholic or a drunk driver, okay, well that's hunting now. It is all over and accessible by anyone. And so when you present yourself as a dipshit, it may not matter to you because you're thinking, my buddies will think this is funny. Well, I'm sure they will. It's just not your buddies looking now. Before it was just print. And, it was, you had to get, now you can Google anything and find anything you want. And so when you have, social media, it's really good for some things. And as far as growing the sport for people looking into getting into hunting, but it's also really bad because all the ding dongs throwing deer in the back of their truck with beer cans and, these horrible photos I see guys post where, dudes and chicks are doing horrible things to animals. Like, I don't know, kissing animals. And I don't get that at all. I don't understand. I'm not agreeing with the hate pages, but I can certainly say like Copper Plated Sixes post some stuff up that, somebody's got to say something because it just needs to stop. It's a horrible outlook on hunting. And again, just if I run into a hiker on a trail and they're anti-hunting and they're kind of blasting me, it's kind of my obligation to take the higher road, to explain to them the best that I can. So maybe they'll think like, man, maybe that guy isn't all bad. He seemed pretty cool. And talk to him. And same with social media. I don't have any issue with grip and grin. But I think that there needs to be, that's why I try to post multiple photos. There needs to be a story, needs to be presented well so people can look that you earned it. You trained beforehand. There's a story behind it rather than just, a giant animal and I get accused of it because they're, like a pack out photo. Well, I run a backpack company. So of course people will say, you just pack out the horns. And I'm like, what do you think's in the pack? Nobody wants to see bloody raw meat, dipshit. Like, of course it's just going to be the horn. Like I can't strap a quarter bloody on the outside and take a photo because then you'll complain that that's, ugly or not presented well. So trying to present it well is the best. And there are a lot of people not doing that on social media. So I think there's a lot of good things, but I think there's, some bad things. And it could be argued in 10 or 15 years if hunting's getting hacked away, it could be argued that social media had a decent amount to do with that.
Well, it's like I remember my first year hunting, the first time I had a deer come in, it was just a doe. Actually, looking back, she was a really nice sized doe, one that I would have loved to have taken. And the first thought that popped in my mind, and I didn't even grow up in the hunting culture, I grew up around it, but the first thought was like, oh, if it's not a big deer, you can't shoot it. You couldn't post that. And it was just like, man, like, geez Louise, like, is that the influence that the hunting culture has created? And just the offshoots of all that, and just the whole, like, it's all about the biggest animal you can get, and just, it's been an interesting ride here this last year, especially now being part of the hunting community and part of the social media realm of all that, and how do we do that and how do we handle that. And I know that's one thing I've really appreciated about what you have brought to the table and through your podcast and your post was the honesty of what you are, who you are, what you do, but also the level of presentation that you're given and the story behind it, that it's not just here's my big trophy kill, look at me. And so that's something I've definitely have appreciated and learned a lot from, and just watching you and how you have handled a lot of things and how you've presented things. So definitely appreciate that as a new person coming into all of this.
Oh, I know. Thank you for saying that. And I think that I'm not saying trophy hunting is a bad thing, but the word trophy hunting is definitely, you're probably not going to get beat up too much by anti-hunters shooting a doe as much as you would shooting, let's say, a lion or a giraffe or a hippo or, or something crazy. And obviously you definitely want, you want to, I'm not very good at it. You want to shoot the oldest species you can, or that's the idea, but there's nothing wrong with your first buck being a forked horn or a spike, or your first deer being a doe. It's part of the journey, and it's pretty hard for that journey, no matter who you are and what you've got. That journey's probably going to start out with some small animals, and that's just the way life is. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I actually have about gotten into fist fights over people talking crap about guys that shoot, does or shoot smaller bucks, and I get it. Guys are like, oh, let it grow for a year or whatever. And I understand where they're coming from. Not everyone has the same opportunity. So, you guys are in an area that's not great for trophy hunting, where, me, I'm hunting on a private land and I'm going to have more opportunities or whatever. So for a guy that gets to hunt, Pike County, Illinois, or the Golden Triangle, for him to start screaming at you because you shot the first forked horn you saw, well, you know what? If he can shit out deer and just make them appear in northern Minnesota, by all means, I'd like to see that trick, but there's just not that many. And so you kind of got to just work with what you've got and have fun. And I think if people start doing that, we'd be a lot better off than all the negativity.
Yeah. I think for me, I know towards the beginning of the podcast, I was like, yeah, I didn't start out liking you. And then you grew on me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd like everything you present and talk about. I think the thing that really makes it connect for me is that you're relatable and approachable and obviously honest. And there's just guys out there where it's almost like they make themselves seem like they're on a different level. And it's like, we're all hunters. We're all trying to do, similar things at least. Yeah. And we all have a pursuit that we're after. And to be able to, even whether it's just on Instagram, whether it's just even like when you're like, ask me anything, whatever.
Or even all the stories you've shared of the multiple times that you've missed at animals, that has like helped me a ton this last year after missing a ton myself, and go, okay, if he can, who's had way more experience than I've had, has shot and practiced with a bow way longer, way more arrows downrange. If he can miss, I'm going to miss.
I can give myself a little grace here.
So yeah.
Oh, it totally. I mean, actually, one of my buddies, his name's John Renfred. He was with my wife when we were in Texas, and I was trying to shoot. My goal is to shoot a really big Aoudad, and I got it done, but it was not an easy road to hoe. I missed. I think we figured 11 times. I missed 4 times in one outing, and in one stalk of this buck, or this whatever buck ram, kind of bouncing back and forth in and out. And I shot over and under, and I don't let that bug me. I mean, it sucks. I mean, I let it bug me, but I don't dwell on it. And that's one thing. You go, dude, I learned so much from you. But one of the things I learned was that it's okay to miss. Like, it's going to happen. You do your best to not let it happen. But I mean, you think about it, and I know what you guys are talking about, because believe me, I've worked with them. Everyone's perfect online, and it drives me crazy because some of the people that claim perfection the most suck. They are the worst. Like one specifically, I know missed 14, either hit or missed 14 animals in one season. And he never really talks about that too much. And not to say that you want to, run around screaming, I missed 14 times, but you definitely, no one is perfect. And I practice more than anyone I know, and I strive for perfection. I try and work out as much as I can and stay away from cookies, but I want people to know I'm kind of a fat kid, and it's an uphill road. And if you focus enough, you can stay in shape. Yeah. But it sucks, right? Yeah. Not everyone's Cameron Haynes, right? Yeah. I mean, he loves to run. That more power to him. I like eating freaking cookies. I mean, I do. I have an issue with peanut butter.
Yeah.
Well, letting people know that, I think, is important.
Yeah.
I'll quit going on a tangent here, but
well, no, that's good because that for me. Like I post no matter what. Like it's almost like an integrity check where it keeps me from doing the thing. I think where it's like, oh, here's the success. I post every hunt I go on, knowing that most of them are going to be just utter failures or just boring, nothing to be seen, whatever it is. And I had someone actually, they told me afterward when I actually finally got something this year, they were like, it made it actually rewarding for me to watch, knowing that, like seeing the numbered hunts that had failed and you hadn't seen anything or missed whatever it was. And so for me, like that's such a part of it. And like you had mentioned, having that, the story behind it, and like you did work for it, you did put all this stuff into it to get it, makes it so much more palatable for people that maybe even don't even hunt. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, well, that's good because it's not like it's fun missing, but I think it is definitely important to let people know it. You know, it happens, and also the physical struggles. Physically, you know, I mean, I consider myself to be, I guess you could say, maybe one of the more foremost experts on backpack hunting. But it's not like it doesn't suck. Your lungs still burn, right? I mean, you still have to go through, you're not impervious to rain. I mean, there's a lot of negative sides to it. And I think if people know it, you know, kind of like, oh, well, it sucked for him, I'm glad, and try to make the best of it. It'll make other people, maybe in their time of need, think about, well, you know, Aron gets to hunt all the time and this happened to him, and maybe help him fight through it a little bit more, I guess.
Well, it certainly has helped me.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, we don't want to keep you all night. Definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing with us your experience and wisdom. It's been super helpful. So, appreciate it a lot, Aron.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have my cell number now, so anything you need, I mean, call, and I'll do whatever I can to help you out. And yeah, I like what you guys are doing. Obviously, I'll make sure and share this and throw it up on my page or whatever with the podcast, and try and get you guys some more listeners. It's good for people to hear from guys just getting going. So I like what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
So before we leave, real quick, just where can people find you?
Oh, good Lord. Instagram is ARONSNYBER. The Kifaru Cast is my podcast, and I'm on there with Frank. Sometimes Frank's on there. And Facebook's Aron Snyder. I have 2 pages. I think one, there's like a limit of people, so I had to start another one. So I got 2 there. And then Kifaru International, KIFARU. International Kifaru Cast on Instagram. We have a YouTube page, Kifaru Cast, and then Kifaru Tube. I write for Eastman Bow Hunting somewhat frequently, and I'm probably missing some stuff, but that's enough.
That'll get them started.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again, Aron, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, later.
All right, you guys take it easy. Have a good night. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Means a lot. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Later.
Bye.